All right, my people of faith, let's take another walk. Let's talk about the two forces of life and death, um, and how we can actually physically see them at their strongest point or at a strong point. Okay. All right. Well, with light and darkness or life and death. Okay. We would call those good and evil. All right. For us to see a power at work, we talk about a force that draws, it attracts at not a small scale, but a large scale. And the purpose of that drawing is to incorporate it into a final stage. We know two places. Well, we heard of two places. Uh, Heaven above, we're talking about, these are spiritual places that physically we can't see, but spiritually we know that they exist based upon the impact that it has or the influence that it has on our life. Okay, you have the heaven above the earth, and you have Hades, which is beneath the earth, below the earth. Some would say going up to your higher nature is heaven, or being elevated from the flesh. And to surrender to the flesh is to go to a lower nature, which is to go into the effects of the works of Hades or the darkness force. Okay? All right. Let's say if you have two entertainers, these actually, what I'm saying is an entertainer may come to mind. I have two that I would like to use to show you how the force actually works. Okay? All right. Let's say you have Travis Green, for example. All right, we will know he is known as an inspirational gospel singer, correct? Okay, or let's say not even Travis Green. Let's use Israel Horton, for example. Israel Horton. Okay, Israel Horton, when he's at he what's inside of him when it's allowed to be released, it draws an elevation towards the spirit, which means who all listens to it, they elevate to a high level spiritually, but not in the spiritual plane of darkness, but they surpass, they go past the natural, they go past the desires and the lusts of the flesh, and they go towards the desire and the craving for being in the presence of God. Okay? All right? Now, that's one example. Let's say if we go in the opposite corner of that. Now, at any point, I'm not saying the person itself, the shell itself, is the actual power. I'm saying the force that's inside them. It chose to use them as a vessel. Okay? Now, you're talking about a dark force or a light force. Now, we just explained the light force. Okay? All right? Now, you may have in mind some people. I'm just using these two as an example. Okay. The dark force. Let's say when, let's say the Sasha Fierce character that Beyonce was. Okay. Okay. The Sasha Fierce, not Beyonce per se, but the Sasha Fierce character. That spirit was made to draw, to elevate the physical realm. It elevates the mind in a dark place to to elevate the flesh, to crave, to desire, to want things of the fleshly nature. It's bigger than an actual person that we think we know or we have known before they get to this point of involvement of these spiritual realms. If, let's see, now of course the two can go opposite directions. The person that's holding Sasha Fierce can go to the place of light. We would call that deliverance from that one side and go into the other side, as well as the the force that's inside of Israel. Israel can actually go to the dark side, which normally be the case. Not saying it's going to be the case, but normally be the case when we're dealing with in this life force. We choose in between life and death constantly. Life and death, light and darkness, good or evil, peace or torment. This is our constant battle. It's a coin flip all the time. Who we going to serve? What we going to serve? How we going to surrender ourselves to? So okay. Heaven and Hades. No physical person that we know have been there, or we haven't been there ourselves. Well, if we have, okay. How can I say it? From a large scale, most people, we get some witnesses or some who have witnessed either place, but we have to rely on their testament that they're telling what they saw, and we have to believe that what they saw was real. Okay, but when they're telling the story, if we can actually go with them while they're telling the story, then we will know the difference between the two. But there was a person there has been assigned people to witness what happens in heaven, and there have been assigned people who witness what happens in hell, to give us the coin flip is based upon our faith, which side we're going to believe the most. So how does that impact the influence of what Haiti? I mean, what the Sasha Fierce character does, as well as what does inside of Israel Horton. How it affects either one is based upon us, right? So when the flesh is elevated, it goes to the pit of hell. The soul goes to the pit of hell. When the flesh is elevated, and uh, and worship and idled, not of others but ourself. When we can look in the mirror and all we see is the physical, we have just lowered our soul to hell. Why? Because the physical is not eternal; it's temporal. Somebody say, "What do you mean?" Like, well, what makes it temporal? Well, the proof that it's temporal. The hair loses its strength. We may not have all the hair that we once had. All right, that's my example. Okay, we our body doesn't react and respond the way that it once did. Um, the structure of our body shape may enlarge or stretch versus being to the size that it was prior to. So it's the what we consider our beautiful points of the physical that goes away. However, in the spiritual realm, none of that goes away. None of it goes away. It's a constant plane. So whoever you are, and if you choose to be in darkness, if your soul chooses to stay in darkness, that's how you're going to be. That's what's going to come out of you. That's what you're going to draw to. So if you're going to choose to be in light, that's how you're going to be. That's how what you're going to be around. That's what's going to come out of you. So you got these two gatherings. You got Sasha Fierce and you got the force that's inside Israel Horton. You got the force that's inside Beyonce and the force that's inside of Israel Horton. All right. The force that's inside Israel Horton is to draw you away from the flesh. The force that's inside Beyonce is made to draw you towards the flesh. Now the flesh wants to keep you enslaved to fear. Okay? Now the force that's inside Israel wants to liberate you from the flesh so you are in eternal peace in your soul. Your soul, once again, is the mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination. If you ever seen a person for like who is so overwhelmed, so pressured, and so full of anxiety and panicking and all sorts of things, their soul is not at peace. They have accumulated and cultivated a lot of darkness inside their soul. Either it came through a force of darkness of their understanding, like they drew around a crowd, and the conversation is not just words, but it's coming from a place of darkness. They have incorporated that inside their soul. Now their soul is covered inside that darkness. How can you have peace inside darkness? Now a person said like, well, how do you know that this is real and truth? Well, I can prove that it's real and truth. Let's go with something to go with. Let me see, how can I put it? What prayer does, okay, there's two, once again, it's always good and evil. It's always going to be good and evil. While we on the earth, it's always going to be good and evil. Which side our soul is going to pick. So there's two forms of prayer. There's a prayer of darkness and there's a prayer of light. Remember, if you're trying to elevate from the flesh, that means you are trying to go higher. I'm not talking about a person who goes and get intoxicated or get some substance or artificial substance and they try to take their soul to another dimension. You're going to go to a dark dimension. You're not going to go to a dimension of peace. It's going to give you the deception that is of peace. Okay, to prove that, if getting intoxicated or having some artificial substance or some kind of drug or some hallucinogen drug is actually give you a reality that is real. It's like a mirage, but it's not. The proof that it does, if it was of any good, it wouldn't harm you later. Everything that you do that actually gets you to stay inside the flesh, the fleshly nature, which is a carnal mind, which is a mind that's not about love, that's not seated in the counsel of love. It's not seated in the presence of love. That's automatically going to make your soul be in torment. It starts off, it's like a gold brick. Somebody painted, instead of actually having a brick that's gold of material, is actually actual concrete of lime and mortar that's painted with the color gold. This is how deceptive it is. It actually looks real, but it is not. Okay. All right. So if anything will actually have lead the soul to go into the place of the physical realm of the body, to enhance the physical realm of the body, you are going into a dark place. Some may have said that we are spiritual schizophrenics because there's a good side of us, but the outside of us is trying to influence the good side of us. That's on the inward part. So we take the intoxications or the hallucinogen drugs, whatever, to escape both worlds, both realities. But that actually doesn't exist. You actually go further into the darkness because you're actually running away from the impact of that dark force. Is convincing you to believe that you're escaping it, but you're actually running into a deeper place to it. It's like a lower level to it. All right? And ultimately, if you keep running, you go to another lower level. And if you keep running, you go to another lower level. If you keep running, you go to another lower level. Eventually, you get to the point where your soul is covered in hell itself. And the only thing you're going to do, you're going to be like this. In the Bible, we'll call it like the gentleman that was named Legion. You will become to the stage where you're so full of darkness, nothing naturally can contain it. The only one that can set you free is something that's of the opposite nature, which will be of light. And if we don't allow that light to separate us or to conquer that what's inside of us, our ultimate fate is hell itself or Hades itself, and we then are there waiting for the lake of fire, which is where anything that's serving death and darkness, and which is the ruler of all that, is lies and um, let's say the liar, the father of lies, is Satan. Okay, so Satan and all his followers are awaiting the lake of fire. You have, as well as you have heard of um, Jesus the Christ. You have also heard the Antichrist. The Antichrist, the Bible speaks of that there are going to be many Antichrists. That means there's going to be many that's going to take in the form of this power of such place of darkness, and they're going to come with a sword from their mouth. That whatever that they say is standing against anything that Jesus said. Now, the main thing that you want to know what Jesus said is especially two things. Place the God above, the Heavenly Father, who is all love, ahead of your life. You then take that love and you walk in it. Not with people that you like, but to every person. You treat everybody in that self-same manner of love. Let's say if I love my mom, and it would be unquestionable love. Like, I would do whatever. I lay down my life for her. I'd do whatever it takes. I should have that self-same love, that self-same impact, influence that I have for her should be carried over to a person that I actually hate. That's how powerful love can go. It can go where you don't want it to go. So what the opposite wants you to do is take that love and don't put it towards where you don't want it to go. It actually wants you to keep it to yourself. Because if you keep it to yourself, you self-destruct. Because how we are designed and built, we're designed to pass God's spirit along, not to keep it for ourselves, but we're designed to pass it to the next person. Because the Father, how He does, He wants everything inside of Him to be unified, to be one complete circle. He wants all His children back home with Him, which is going back to the start of it all. He wants us all as one family. What He envisioned when He made one person was that one person would spread His spirit over all the earth. Everybody that's on the earth, God foreseen, God knew. He just desired that everybody would be in this one harmony, this harmonic, whatever, this type of atmosphere that we all have His spirit. But unfortunately, Satan, Lucifer, turns to Satan. He did what he did, and he influenced one to go to the dark side, which means to enhance the flesh. In the book of Genesis, if you notice, when God gave the command to Adam, you could freely eat of the garden, but this tree, which is the tree of the knowledge of the good and of the evil, He don't want you to touch. Once Adam ate of that tree, he resorted to a lower nature, which was he was immediately in tune to his flesh. He noticed that he was naked. Prior to that, he was never known to be naked. All right? To know that you actually have a physical shell and to embrace the physical shell as it is superior to you as a spirit is actually to deny that you are a seed of God, and you taking on the consciousness and the knowledge, the understanding of another person, and the other person defied God in the very beginning. That was not Lucifer's assignment to do what he did with Adam. That was not his assignment, even though God knew it. But that was not his assignment. His assignment was to minister, like the angels were. They was made to minister unto us. All right? Okay, so if Satan defied that, So then somebody may say, well, then how come God didn't just wipe Satan off? Because God works in order. If God were to wipe Satan off, that's disorder. That's like saying, that's like asking God to go up against his word. If God said, let there be light, and all of a sudden he's like, no, I don't want no light. That's God going up against his word. His word is his bond. This is how deep deception of darkness gets inside of us. Our word doesn't mean anything. You tell a person you'll be at such place, and by the time you get to that time to be there, you're like, well, I don't care. Your word is no good. That shows the form of how deep the darkness is inside of you. Now, you can, but to make matters, to solve that situation, you can go ahead and tell the person, okay, I'm not going to be there. But we're talking about the very, very, very beginning of it all. When God created Lucifer, he gave everybody the free will to choose to be with God. I mean, to be with him, the God the Father, or choose not to be with God the Father. This is angels. This is human race. This is animals. This is everything. Everything has the choice to choose between good and evil, life or darkness. That's how powerful the presence of God is in all his creation. All his creation has him inside of it. All his creation, that's the sky, the wind, the waves, everything. So when Jesus came on the scene, he erased everything that Adam did. That's why he went through everything that he went through by going on the cross and doing the miracles and all that good stuff. He defied the laws that's serving death. So we, if we receive him, can be free. Now, I tie all that up and going back to the power. The point of me saying all that is to give an example from the Bible, how the Bible is the blueprint to both of these forces, these realities. The reality of life, or of light, or of heaven, or of good, versus the reality of darkness, that's of evil, that's of fear, that's of Hades, hell, that we know it as. Okay? So if to so you have this understanding, if it draws you to enhance the physical, like, you ever heard a person say, like, I'm beautiful, I am that whatever. They are serving darkness, because the body is based upon what Adam did. The body is subject to sin. So for if anybody to heighten that consciousness of serving sin, which is going to be in disobedience to God. Serving sin is to say that you're going to automatically defy God. So that's what the body is subject to do, unless the soul is put in check. How is the soul put in check? It has to serve something greater than sin. It has to serve something greater than darkness. It has to surrender itself to something greater than evil, which we would call love, we would call beautiful, we would call kindness, we would call peace, we would call truth, we would call honesty. This is purity. This is when the soul is perfected, when it's serving something greater than the opposite. On an average, what we see around us all the time, or most of the time, is people that we know or we don't know. They are heavily influenced with one or two worlds. You got the majority and the minorities. The majorities are, and it depends where you are. If you go to, it's so beautifully, like, it's visually beautiful. Let's say, like, if you went to a church, you can see good and evil there. That's not the objective. That's not the point of it. But you can actually see good and evil, because the purpose of the church was to go from being evil to becoming good. But the enemy wants to destroy everything that's of good, so he influenced the leaders to allow the evil to come in. The evil is not people. It's a force. It's a force. that hovers. Jesus conquered that force over all the earth. I mean, all the earth. We have the power to allow that force to be resurrected. Right? And once it's resurrected, it's going to influence, which is the sole purpose of it, is to influence because it's there to kill, steal, and destroy everything that God's word stands on. God's word stands on the love, the harmony, the peace, the kindness, the truth. Honesty. It stands on that and is there to destroy all that. If you notice, every time we do something physically, let's say if a person watches pornography, it has nothing to do with them spiritually, but it has something to do with their soul going to a spiritual place. Their soul goes to a dark direction to actually willing to witness a man and a woman, or maybe two men or two women, or maybe a gathering of people that don't love each other. Right? And by them watching it, they're saying that it's okay for my soul to entertain something that is considered perverse. Why is it considered perverse? Because there's no love there. Anything that doesn't sit in the presence of love is considered perverse. It is perverse. Why does it get a bad reputation for being perverse? Because nothing good comes from it. It's cursed. It starts off good. This is why, for most people, when they watch it, afterwards they feel bad. That's because there's good still inside them, and they're convicted because it's not where they're supposed to. Their soul is not where it's supposed to be. But for the person who is numb to the conviction or who is numb to the darkness, whatever, the conviction is like not even there. They don't even feel that it's wrong. They don't have a inward presence or inward warning or whatever telling them that it's wrong. Because they're numb to the darkness of it. But that person, they would try their best to sound like or act out in ways that they do walk in love. This is called deception. This is why whatever that they do, it always falls apart. Whenever a storm comes, they always fall apart. They go deeper and deeper. They turn worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So, but if the person that can elude the addiction or get away from the pornography, I'm talking about myself now. This is testimony. I've watched pornography for over 20 years, right? To get away from that stronghold, to be something more, don't mean anything to any probably one of y'all. But since I left it, my well of good, I became blessed from it. My well has never been empty. I have never been without. I don't toil. I don't have to sweat. I'm not bragging. What I'm saying is that somebody can say, well, it's just your life. That's the whole point of a person telling their testimony, is to say that what they have, the God that they're serving of good, is saying that it's no respecter of person. What they have, you can have as well. What I accomplished, so separating from pornography, what I separated from having unmarital sex and casual sex and all that, what we call fornication. When I separated from all that, my life became extremely blissful. Whatever that I say and touch and do prospers, where it builds up, but it never falls apart. It never falls apart. Now I'm coming to the mind of Christ. Now, we saw the demonstrations of how it is in the Bible. You know, what Jesus was able to do. He was able to heal the sick, raise the dead. Those who were amputated, he was able to give them back their limbs. Those who was dead, he raised them up. He walked on the water. He feed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5. I mean, he did. So he elevated. But he started at 13 teaching the Word of God. The Word of God was through the life force that was inside of him. He went to the synagogues, to the churches, teaching at 13, and he progressed from that by spending, because he's not attached to death. He's not attached to the flesh. His desires, his focus is not on the flesh. So he grew, he grew, he grew to the point where when the acceptable year came, or the appointed time for him to show the manifestations that he is the Son of God, the Father, he gets baptized, he gets anointed, he gets appointed. Now it's that time for him to do things. Even before it was time, he was able, through the act of faith, he was able to do a miracle, which was the water turned to wine. But he wasn't even yet in position to actually do a miracle like that as of yet. It's like with us, there's a seed inside of us that's of God that has to grow to the knowledge of him, has to grow to the mind of Christ, has to go to the mind. And once we are separated from the carnal mind, once we are separated from the things that serve in the flesh, which is serving sin, which is going to serve fear, which is going to serve death. Once we are separated from those things that's entrapping us or pulling us to a darker, darker, darker place, we elevate higher in God on the earth. And this is where the dominance that Adam once had, he was able to tell the fish to do. I don't care if it was a whale or a shark or whatever, he was telling them to move. But if you look at it now, the earth is actually showing that dominance, because we are being set free from the spirit of fear, death. That's another thing. Okay. With that being said, you got two forces. Let's say the force that's working through Beyonce and the force that's working through Israel. I'm not saying that they can't switch at any time. I'm saying we have both seen it at one time, the impact, where one was gratifying towards the flesh. I'm not, how can I put it? This is within all of us. Everybody goes through this on this earth. Everybody goes through this. So I'm not singling them out. I'm just singling out how large the impact of it that it is. It's huge. The drawing, the influence. So if somebody was saying about the whole, to cut that off, to go to the whole Kanye West and the whole, all that deal, and if he's real, if he's legit, the scripture goes like this: God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. But to follow that up, Jesus says, my sheep knows my voice, and the stranger they will not follow. So a stranger to Jesus, or strangers to us that's inside Jesus, should be anything that's gratifying, that's elevating the consciousness to the flesh. Like,